Hello, everyone. My name is Sveitok, and today I'll be talking about Beam Quest, which is a skill badge offered by Google Cloud and certifying that you are proficient in Apache Beam. So before we begin, let's sort of recap. So now that you have a fairly broad overview of the various concepts in Apache Beam, let's apply them to actually writing some pipelines. So for the majority of this presentation, I'm going to walk you through the lab setup. And so these labs are what eventually add up to be this Beam Quest, and as well as core concepts that each of these labs emphasize. And always remember that if at any point you get stuck during these labs, you can always refer to these solutions that we have. So a little bit about Beam Quest. So it's essentially a series of 5 labs that test various Apache Beam concepts. And upon completion, you'll be granted a shareable skill badge by Google Cloud that you can share and post to your social media. So for example, one thing you can do is you can just share it to your LinkedIn profile to share with your colleagues that you are now certified and proficient in Apache Beam. This could also be useful for signaling to future employers that you have proficiency in Beam. And right now, the Quest is currently free of charge, and you will be granted credentials to a Google Cloud console during this lab, so you can actually run your Apache Beam pipelines on Google Cloud's Dataflow Runner and see how that works. And so now to talk about the labs, there are 5 labs, and in this presentation, I will focus on the first 2 of these labs, and in part 2 of this presentation, I'll delve into the remaining 3 labs. And so the first thing I want to do is we'll dive into the first lab, which is writing an ETL pipeline with Apache Beam and Cloud Dataflow. But before I jump in, I first want to show you how you can access these labs and sort of get set up. So the first thing you should do is you could Google Apache Beam Quest on Google search. And you'll see here when you're on Google search that you'll see a blog post on Beam that talks about this open source credential with completion badge. And if you scroll to the bottom, you can see here that you can obtain your badge for free, and you can use this access code. So just click on this access code, and it may take a second to load. And yes, it'll probably take you to a page that looks like this, a Google Cloud Skill Boost page. And so the first thing you can do is you can type in Apache Beam in the search bar, and you can hit Getting Started with Apache Beam. And then you can click on Getting Started with Apache Beam here. And so probably if you're not already logged in, your page will look more similar to this, where you'll essentially, you can do the same thing. So you can go back and you can essentially you can join if you don't already have the credentials for a Google Cloud Skill Boost account, or if you do, you can just directly sign in. And so in this case, I already have those set up, so I'm just going to sign in with Google. And if it takes you sort of to a generic page, once you're signed in, if you search the Getting Started with Apache Beam again, it should take you to the logged in version. So I will navigate now to Getting Started with Apache Beam. So I think if I click on Explore here, it'll take me back to that page, and I can just type in Getting Started with Apache Beam. And so now I'm logged in. So your page should look like this. It'll look a little different because I've already finished the completion badge, but you should see these labs already. And so let's dive in. Let's take a look at this first one. So writing an ETL pipeline using Apache Beam and Cloud Dataflow. So when we click on the lab, you'll see a page like this. You'll see a start lab with the time of 90 minutes or 1 hour 30 minutes. And then some instructions. And so the thing you'll want to do is essentially you'll first want to start your lab. And you because you've used the access code, you will have credits available. So you can launch actually with credits. And then it'll generate a username, a password, project ID, and an ID URL. And so you can click on open this Google Cloud Console, which you'll see here. That'll open a tab like this, and then you can actually copy the username that they've given you, and you can also copy the password that they've given you, and this will log you into your instance, your Qwiklabs instance, which is hosted on Google Cloud. And this will take you to a Google Cloud Console page, essentially, where you can do everything necessary in your lab. And so if I go back to sort of what this this lab looks like, you can see here we have some instructions. So in the beginning, there's going to be some commands to make sure that we have the right access permissions. We'll need to set our project to the correct project if it's not already set. And then also we'll have to ensure that we have these right basically service account permissions, which will ensure that we can do the operations necessary, that we have permission to do these operations necessary throughout the lab. And then we'll have this IDE URL, which will actually be doing our development in. And so you can copy and paste that into your browser, but do note that sometimes it takes a few minutes to load. And so sometimes it takes a couple of minutes before it's fully loaded. But then that's actually where you'll be doing your pipeline writing. And you can see sort of on these UI images that you'll see something very similar to this, where you'll actually be doing the development. And so now for actually what this lab covers. So the first part of this lab is essentially going to talk about writing a pipeline in Java. So we're going to do things starting with generating synthetic data, and then reading from a source, and then adding a transformation, and then writing to a sink. So essentially all our sort of steps in an end-to-end pipeline. The second thing we'll do is essentially create a user-defined function, and we'll write that. And we're actually going to run this via a Dataflow template. And so that's a little bit about the first lab. You'll see sort of throughout that there will be kind of images and text explaining these various concepts. And you'll see some commands that actually ensure that you're writing your code in the right place. So making sure that you're in the right directory and things of that nature. And then it'll walk you step by step on actually, doing things like generating the synthetic data and et cetera, reading your data from source, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, now we can talk a little bit about the second lab. So the second lab is essentially going to be advanced streaming analytics pipeline with running it on Cloud Dataflow. So this is going to delve a little deeper into the more advanced concepts. So things that we're going to be doing here, for example, techniques to handle late data. So setting the allowed lateness, and then also setting a trigger. And then secondly, we'll be dealing with malformed data. So for example, how we can modularize our pipeline code to best suit this, and then also writing our malformed data for analysis. And so this will be pretty analogous to like dead letter analysis. And so that's our second lab is going to be very similar to the first one, where we're going to essentially be writing our code in the same sort of way. So we'll open the same kind of IDE URL, and it'll be very similar in the sense that this is the lab, and it'll have very clear instructions on what to do essentially, and where to sort of write this code. So that's it for these first two labs. And then join us in the next session, where we'll talk about the remaining 3 labs in this quest.